Playwriting gets into your blood and you can't stop it. At least not until the producers or the public tell you to. T.S. Eliot.
You're listening to Writing Roots, brought to you by Aspen House Publishing.
Welcome to Writing Roots. I'm Lee Hull.
And I'm Lee Esses. Today we're talking about the advantages of writing something for the stage.
This is different than our last episode of screenwriting. There are many differences in how you write for each and the things that you need to consider.
A lot of the formatting can look similar to screenwriting, but as a playwright, you're doing a lot of different things with your story. Some examples we have are something like The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde.
Of course, a lot of William Shakespeare's work were plays.
And recently put on in this area is Mr. Burns, a post-electric play. It's a very interesting, pushing the boundaries kind of story, which is one of the great things about this stage is you aren't locked into being entertaining. You can create art for art's sake.
Another one I want to add, the production of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child is a fascinating look into modern playwriting.
So what makes the play particularly unique or special?
Brian Greene said, quote, "Writing for the stage is different from writing for a book. You want to write in a way that an actor has material to work with, writing in the first person and not the third person, and pulling out the dramatic elements in a bigger way for a stage presentation."
Basically, what he's saying is kind of like film, it's a collaborative art. Your actors get to contribute to the story. Your director gets to contribute to the story.
And I like that last line, pulling out the dramatic elements, because the one thing that I learned in my acting classes that I had was that for stage acting, you have to make everything bigger so that those people in the back can see. So everything is more dramatic. Everything is bigger.
One of the interesting things about the stage is their use of tertiary characters. So you have a handful of characters, and then you have the chorus. They aren't necessarily extras where they never show up again. So you have to write with them or exclude them entirely.
One of the ones that comes to mind for me is Hamilton. You have your main cast of characters, and then at that kind of act split, a lot of your secondary characters become different people in the second part because the story shifts and they just need to play new roles. And then you have the chorus, which are the dancers and the extra voices that add to the musical side of things, that they don't play roles, but they're always there interacting in some way.
Another thing that makes the stage unique is you will often have it as a two-part structure, where you have an act 1 where you introduce the problem and everything goes wrong, and then you have an act 2 where your main character works to solve the problem. This is split up by an intermission.
This is also a good opportunity for you to combine different kinds of arts. So you have set art, you have the music in the pit, you have lighting design and song and dance and acting, all sorts of things that have to come together multiple nights for a seamless play experience.
And one of the fun things about it is the show must go on. So it's not like you can reset and retake and refilm something like you can on the screen. So everything as a storyteller needs to build into a doable structure on the other side.
Looking at the audience for a play format, you're going to get a lot of the artsy folks, the people who go out to experience plays because it is an art form.
In my experience, a lot of the butts in those seats are also theater people. People who have performed on the stage, people who have worked behind the scenes, not just artsy folks, but people who are devoted to the community and will see the show regardless of if it's part of their target genre.
This is changing just a little bit in bigger ways because Broadway especially is becoming more accessible. So you'll get a lot of people going to see certain shows because they want to see that story. They want to see Cursed Child. They want to see Hamilton. They want to see Wicked.
I've also found that a lot of the people who enjoy the theater are musically inclined. This is how I got involved in the theater back in the day, I was in the pit for Bye Bye Birdie freshman year of high school.
There are many advantages to writing for the stage. There is an intimacy allowed in playwriting that you don't get with screenwriting or novel writing. And that's because you see the audience. The audience is there with the actors, with the people who are putting on the show, experiencing it all together.
I cannot tell you how big of a difference it makes when the audience is laughing at the jokes. Then it encourages the actors for that one night, and they become even funnier and they have so much more fun. And therefore, the audience is laughing even harder. Any types of emotions that either the stage or the audience has gets amplified tenfold by the fact that they are physically in the same room together.
They also get to experience the show in many ways. It's not just the sight, it's not just the sound. It's the smells, the fog, the food, and in the case of The Cursed Child, the intermission. In the first act, the lobby with all the gift shops is standard Hogwarts fare. You go in, and with the change of the story where all of a sudden Voldemort has taken over, history has changed, and now he rules the world. When you come out into that lobby again at intermission, it is filled with Voldemort-themed things. Everything has the dark mark. Everything is that darker colors and themed towards this change in the story. So it's not limited to just what's happening on the stage, but how the people experience everything with the story.
That opportunity is one of the things you really have to lean into when you're creating a successful play. Also, that spectacle is 1,000 times more fascinating when it's in person. That's why magic shows are so much more enjoyable to experience in person than on the screen. Same thing with things like fight scenes. If you see a fight scene in a play, it is 1,000 times more dramatic than if you see it on the screen.
Stage writing can be a stepping stone into a lot of different fields, especially screenwriting, because the formatting is similar and it gives you experience writing for actors. And it is a lot easier to produce. You don't need a giant budget to create a stage play. You don't really even need a set in some cases. You can do a black stage production.
And on that note, it's a lot easier to be produced. If I'm trying to get Disney to pay me money for my script versus trying to get our local theater troupe to give it a shot, I'm much more likely to convince my friends, especially if I've spent time in the theater, to put on my play.
It's not all advantages, though. There are things that you will find difficult. And one of those things, you are limited by space, budget, and technology.
You do not see a lot of sci-fi. You don't see a lot of fantasy on the stage.
At least not in smaller productions. You might in like big Broadway productions, but they have a ton of cash.
It's also very difficult to write a bit part. That tertiary character who is just doing the main character's dry cleaning is very difficult to have in your story. It's very difficult to have these characters as part of a cast because you don't want them to show up for one scene, night after night after night, rehearsal after rehearsal, performance after performance, for their single line.
If you do have these characters, they need to be double castable. So have one actor play multiple of these different kinds of characters so they have more purpose for being there than a single line. Again, though, you need to consider how much time they need to take off stage in order to swap roles, to swap clothes, to swap makeup, whatever. You can't be expecting them to throw on clothes and throw off clothes in half a second.
One of the biggest disadvantages of the theater is it's very rare to be discovered there. People are going because they know you already.
It can be difficult to break into those places where you might actually get discovered, which, New York, Broadway, those bigger stage productions. It's possible, but it is difficult.
And you are limited by the kinds of genres you can pull off. Again, sci-fi fantasy, not going to be super helpful. You can't do a road trip comedy. That would be very difficult to pull off. Zombies, difficult to pull off.
But you get a lot more of the artsy type stories, the avant-garde, that give the audience room to interpret the actual meaning. It's not necessarily about entertainment, but philosophy in some kind of ways.
And pushing boundaries. If you look at The Rite of Spring was a ballet, it caused people to go into riots. It's also fairly common for musicals to be on stage, especially before they're on the screen.
And of course, comedies. You can take almost everything and make it a comedy on stage. And this is where your audience interaction really matters, because you do get the laughter, that interaction that feeds the energy within the production. If you decide that stage writing is for you, have fun with it. You do get a lot of chance to explore the human condition. You get a chance to really dig into dialogue and focusing on how to write for people speaking, for people performing. It's a good opportunity to work on your writing skills, so long as you
write selfishly.
If you have a question or comment for our hosts or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at writingroots@aspenhousepublishing.com or find us on Facebook by searching for Aspen House Publishing.